Let's talk about the next major issue that happened, and that is the terrorist threat of 9/11. What are your memories of that?
I was in the Capitol building at the time, and I remember one of the secretaries saying, "Oh my, a plane has gone into the World Trade Center." It's probably the same kind of thing that happened in the Empire State Building, where a plane had flown into it. Went about our business for a while there, and the second plane hit some 45 minutes or so later. And there was an announcement that another plane was on the way over Pennsylvania, was 12 minutes out, and the announcement for evacuation of the building came. I felt it part of my responsibility as a member of the Capitol Police Board to make sure that people were evacuated, and I made sure that my staff had gone, left the offices around, and I left the building myself, but not after my wife Roz called up and said, "Alan, get out of the building, there's another plane on the way." It's hard for something like that to sink in. You plan for disasters to happen, you plan for negative things to happen, for terrorism at some level, but certainly nothing on this level coming to impact our nation's capital. I left the building at that point, and the ramifications of that day, while that fourth plane went down over Pennsylvania, I fully believe that it was coming to the Capitol. I don't think the White House was the target. But the ramifications of that were amazingly severe. We had looked at our security planning for the Capitol Visitor Center, certainly when J.J. Chestnut and Detective Gibson had been murdered, but now a whole reevaluation of what we had been designing, and we were very far along in the planning and the construction documents for the project at that point in time. But we had the men in black come in and our own police officers, and we looked at what we needed to do to continue revising the plan and strengthening it from a security perspective. All of those things took place. Post the 9/11, there were calls for much more security, and we also had a call from the Congress to complete the expansion spaces that had been planned essentially for the House and the Senate in a much more expedited fashion. Part of the original plans were to excavate as big a hole as we could so that in the future years people didn't have to come back and create a mess on the east front of the Capitol again. So as long as we're building for the Visitor Center, we had 85,000 square feet of potential expansion space for the House, the same amount of square footage for the Senate, and we were just excavating those holes, putting in the foundations, putting in the slabs. There were no emergency egress stairs, no electrical, no mechanical, nothing of that sort, no plans in terms of what those spaces would be used for. After 9/11, we were directed to meet with the House, to meet with the Senate, to begin programming those spaces, and to redesign all of the drawings that we had to do for the Visitor Center to accommodate that. Now, if you can imagine, Ron, having a mechanical system designed for the central portion of what is now a 580,000 square foot facility, and not take into account the air conditioning for the two major expansion areas, or the electrical needs of the expansion areas, because our budget was basically to just do the shells for those spaces. So we had the option at that point in time of leaving the design that we had and just adding more mechanical units, more electrical substations, running additional conduit, but from an operations perspective, it made no sense to have multiple units like that when you can have larger units that were much more efficient in terms of energy utilization and also would take up less space and be easier to maintain over the years. So we went back to the drawing boards and we changed the mechanical system, we changed the electrical system. Major filtration systems were added to the mechanical system, which drew a lot more energy than we had originally planned for. All of these changes were in reaction to the 9/11 issues.